Hey everyone, it's Brian here at Red Leaf Ranch. First of all, I can't believe I'm outside in a tank top in November. Tennessee really has some beautiful, amazing weather, and I think it's ideal to work in the garden and get it ready for the winter season. I've been away for about 2.5 weeks from the garden, and a lot of things really perished in the cold spells that we had over the last few weeks. So I'm gonna go through the garden and get everything nice and freshened up and ready for the winter season. So I'm gonna take you along and see what happens. So there is a lot of work that needs to be done in the garden. The cold weather really just decimated a lot of the crops, at least our summer crops. I can't believe our sorrel is still growing. I did hear it was a perennial, but I did not expect it to just keep growing through the cold weather. They're really, really hardy plants. I'm really happy to see it. But our Malabar spinach, as you can see, completely fried out in the cold weather. So this is gonna be something that I have to clean up for sure. We also have our peppers over here that were devastated by the cold weather. Definitely gonna have to clear those out. And especially our tomatoes. Our tomatoes are completely done for. So what I'm gonna do is just go through bed by bed, clear things out, and make it a really nice, fresh, clean slate so that it can fallow for the winter season and I can have a fresh start in the spring. So I'm just about ready to get started on the tomato bed. I think the first thing I'm gonna do is just clear everything out. I'm gonna cut all the plants at the base of the stem to leave the root system in the soil to decompose naturally throughout the winter. I'm gonna weed because there's a lot of weeding that needs to be done. And there's a lot of posts and poles that I use to train a lot of the tomatoes, so a lot of that has to go as well. And I'm gonna go through every bed and do the cleaning up first, and then I think maybe for another day I'm gonna lay the compost in each of the beds. And the reason I want to lay compost in the beds is so that there's a nice base of soil and nutrients for the spring season, so a lot of the plants that we do get planted then have a really beautiful fresh start. But let's get to it. I leave for 1 second and the chickens are all over it. Get out! Let's go! Let's go! No! Let's go! Out! Out! Let's go! Out! 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 Thank you. So as you can see, this is what's left. Lots of weeds and fallen tomatoes. A lot of them are rotted because of the cold and they've just been sitting around. So now it's time to clean all this up. I want to be sure to get all the tomatoes out of here because I don't want them reseeding, because then we're just going to have a whole bunch of tomatoes plopping up next year and I do not want that. So definitely want to get them all out. All right, so I think that is about all I can do for today with the amount of light that we have left. I'm gonna fence this back in, and then I'm gonna get started on some other beds throughout the next few days, and also make sure that I have enough compost to lay in all of the beds that need it. So I'm gonna have to make a run to our garden supply and get all the compost that we need. And I'm also going to mix it with the compost that we already have that we've been composting ourselves. It is quite a bit of compost, but I don't think it'll be enough necessarily to do everything. So, to be continued. It's a new day and the garden cleanup continues. Today, I'm going to continue working on cleaning up the garden beds, making sure all of the old or rotting plants are taken care of, that things are weeded appropriately because a lot of weeds have started to grow, so that I can prepare to lay a nice layer of compost. And I think the final step after all this is over is laying plastic over the garden beds, because I don't want any winter rains to get into the beds and deplete the nutrients because of runoff. So I want to make sure that soil health is the most important thing that we're trying to maintain throughout the winter. So with that said, let's get to it. So in this bed, as you can see, I have these three plants here called pine berries, and they're very similar, or they're very closely related to strawberries. They look exactly like a strawberry, except they're white. It was the first year planting them, and they don't start fruiting till at least the second season that they're in. So I'm gonna leave these here. I planted them as an experiment, and they had a lot of runners run off. So they have these little vines that shoot out, and they essentially plant little baby pine berries around it, and it continues to spread that way. So I had to clean up a lot of those runners, but I am gonna leave this main plant here to fallow through the winter. They are perennial, so they'll keep coming back year after year, and that's why I don't necessarily want to disturb it. So hopefully next year we get some fruit from it. But I think this bed is done. It's time to move on to our broccoli bed. Oh, my poor broccoli. It's still growing so beautifully, like gorgeous. But I'm gonna trim a lot of these dying leaves. And rather than throw them in the compost, I think I'm just gonna leave them on the bed to decompose and give nutrient to the soil. But as you can see, there's so much weeding that needs to be done in here, lots of trimming. We have our beans in here that need to be collected. Whew, this bed gonna need a lot of work. So let's get to it. right, so I think that's about all I can accomplish for now. It's gonna start raining really soon. Already felt a few drops. It seems pretty cleaned up. It feels really, really good. The next thing I'm gonna do is compost everything, then get a whole bunch of compost and lay it on. And it'll be nice to lay on the compost because everything, whatever is green or the root systems that I left behind are gonna naturally break down and really add to that health of the soil. And I'm leaving our brassicas because they should do well in the cold weather. So I want to leave them going as long as they can to see how they do. Kind of an experiment on my end because I've never grown brassicas into the winter, so I'm excited to see how that goes. And when their life cycle plays out, I'll probably cut back their stem and leave the roots to break down as well. But for now, we're gonna wait until we have more time. So next thing, I'm gonna go get a whole bunch of compost so that when the other beds are done, we'll be ready to go. All right, we are on day 3 of the garden cleanup. Now I'm gonna start working on this Malabar spinach bed that had the Malabar spinach lined around the fence there. Gonna clean all that up. I'm a little anxious about it just because there's so many berries on there that have dried up with seeds in them. So I'm gonna be very cautious just to make sure. I mean, it's inevitable, seeds are gonna fall around, but to try and get as little of seed droppings as possible, because the last thing I want to deal with next year is having to pluck a whole bunch of little Malabar spinach seedlings. But it's part of the trade, you know, you got to deal with seeds. So let's get to it. So I'd say one thing I hadn't realized was how invasive Malabar spinach is. Like, it just kind of vined and grew over everything. It like consumed our sorrel, started growing up our trees. So it's kind of hard getting it out and untangled from everything. But it's gonna be so nice once it's cleared. All right, I feel like she's pretty good to go. Telling y'all, it was a mission getting that spinach off. It was tangled around everything. And I know this sorrel is so relieved to be able to breathe now. It's getting really ensnared there. Oh, gotta get you out of there. No more chew up in there. All right. Now I think it's time to work on the Brussels and eggplant bed. This bed needs some serious TLC. We have these dead basil plants and eggplants. Oh, this dried little eggplant. I'm sorry you didn't make it, buddy. Lots of weeding and lots of pruning on these Brussels sprouts. And actually what I think I'm going to do is prune a lot of the leaves so that it can refocus its energy into making its little buds, its little Brussels buds, because I actually see quite a few of them growing in there now. I don't know if you can see that. You can see it a lot on this one. So definitely want to clear that up and hopefully get some Brussels. So I cleaned up these Brussels sprouts, and you can already see a lot of the little babies popping up. Did that for the other ones too. What I'm hoping this does, I feel like I've seen people do this, cleaning up the leaves like this to refocus the energy into the actual little Brussels. So hopefully we get some Brussels sprouts popping out. It is a little colder now, so their growth has slowed a little bit, so hopefully we get a nice little last push from them. So we have this center bed here where I had our corn growing. And my vision for this bed, at least through the fall, was to have some cover crop grow here. So I placed this burlap over the bed with seeds underneath, but the chickens really scratched it up and probably ate all the seeds because not much cover crop even grew. So I'm just gonna get through this bed, weed it, do a nice layer of compost, then lay a sheet of plastic over it and pin it down so that the chickens can't scratch it up or ruin it. And hopefully it'll bake through the winter and we'll have a nice bed ready for spring. All right, so I think this bed is pretty good to go. Now, I've mentioned it a few times, but our chickens, when I planted onion seeds, they got into that bed and did these little dust baths where all the seedlings were. So when they went around scratching around in other beds, they dropped all those onion seeds and now have onions all over the place. But I actually think I'm gonna leave them because it never hurts to have onions. So, and they don't take up too much nutrients or much from the soil, so I don't really feel like there's much harm in leaving them. So just gonna leave them wherever they pop up. But again, the next step is gonna be get some really nice compost, lay it on, and then cover it in plastic for the winter. All right, so I think that's all that I'm gonna cover for this video in terms of the beds that I am preparing for the winter. We got them cleared up, we got them weeded. In another video, I'm gonna talk about the compost because it's gonna be a whole other segment altogether. I got compost from our local garden supplier, and I'm gonna be mixing it with the compost that I have been composting for the past few months, and then laying it onto the bed and doing the final preparations for the winter. So I'll leave it here, but until then, I want to hear in the comments below what you guys are doing to prepare your garden for the winter and any tips in doing so. Thank you all so much for watching. I am no professional in the garden, but I really hope that this at least inspires you to get the work done. It is a lot of hard work, but it is so rewarding to grow and, you know, nourish yourself with the food that you grow. So until then, I'm sending you all so much love and light. Thank you again for watching. Take care, everyone.